Hello everyone, I'm your host MX2, and in this video we'll be going over a few solutions for radial arrays whenever it comes to Blender 4.4.0. So for this I'll select the object and we'll press Ctrl tilde to bring up the helper, and we see that for this example we have the ability to go in and adjust the count. We're able to choose whether we want to use a custom object or not. We also have custom text that appears for this that we're able to toggle off and on. And each of these actually uses a different solution. For example, we use curve, repeat, and duplicate. To show this in more detail, let's exit out of full screen view and we can go into our graph where we can zoom out and show kind of what we're going for here. In fact, for this example, let us select this area and we will press Ctrl J, F2 and name this radial curve, just so that way everything is properly labeled. And this area we can bring up, and this is basically the node graph that we'll be going over today. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump in here and go over how we can use radial array in the classic way, and also how we can use it with geometry nodes to greater versatility than ever before. So here we are in Blender 4.4.0, and let's go ahead and just set ourselves up with a basic radial array. So I'm going to just put a displacement on this, and we will displace this on the x-axis. So we will just push this out so that way when I'm looking at it from the front, we're just pushing it out to the side. And then next we will add an array. And now that we have an array, we can turn off relative offset and we can turn on object offset. And we don't have our object just yet, so let us shift A and we'll insert our sphere. And with our sphere, we can go back to our cube and specify that as our object offset. And we just want to right click count on our cube and copy our data path, because when we go to this, we'll want to right click the rotation Z and add a driver. And inside this window, which will go away if we move our mouse, I'm going to rename the variable to count. We'll change this to single property and we'll point it at the cube. I'm going to paste in the path that I have on my clipboard, which now gives me the ability to use count as my expression here, and we're just going to type in pi times 2 divided by count, and that will give us a radial array. And this is only able to be recalled from memory because I just went and looked it up. But if we were to now select this object and we control scroll, we now have a radial array. And this is the classic way, and this is the way that we always handled things before. And the good thing is that, if we take this and we parent it to the object, then we can rotate it and we have all this versatility with it. But this is just one way that we handle the radial array whenever it comes to just Blender. And, you're not making these over and over. It's just something that you make and then you have it, right? So if we were to just hide this, we can see that, whenever it comes to hard ops, if you go under the opt-ins and we select the radial array classic, then when we press Q and go under mesh tools, we are basically using the same version of radial array. So we're rolling the wheel, we see that the empty is getting its driver updated with the count, and that is what's updating it. The difference between that and the new version that uses nodes is that whenever you now go and you use radial array, it will now use a version that's based off of geometry nodes, and so there's no longer an empty in the center. We still have the ability to share origins and repeat radials. It's just a little bit cleaner, and it doesn't have the empty, which is something that could have bothered some people, but really it's not a big deal. That was just a recap on radial array up to now as it stands, with making it the classic way, and also how it handles when it comes to using hard ops. It also goes without saying that whenever it comes to Boxcutter, let's delete this, and we have dots enabled. We'll just draw out a box, bring it up, maybe even hold Alt to extrude it from both sides, and then I will press Tab. But you can't press Tab while holding Alt, or else you will just shift to another window, so we'll just pause it there. I will press VB in order to radial array this, and we see that we have kind of lost our count, so I'll just press Tab and bring that back in because we've gone an astronomical distance. And the D helper is useful for being able to get in and intimately adjust it, but we see that even when it comes to Boxcutter, we're able to quickly get in and deal with radial arrays pretty much in the same way that we're able to deal with it with hops, because radial arrays are just so important. In fact, we see that whenever it comes to Boxcutter that we also don't have an empty in the middle of our center. However, it is added to the cutters collection, just letting you know that Boxcutter's radial array still uses the classic way, but by no means is that anything that is problematic. Just letting you know that radial array has been something that we've handled multiple ways across all of our tools, except for Insolve. Insolve has no need to deal with radial array yet. Now that we've done a recap building up to what our goal is, let's go ahead and hide this, and we'll Shift A, and we'll just add another cube. And this cube, we are going to jump over into geometry nodes, and we're going to create a series of geometry node solutions for creating radial arrays based off of our information that we went over with how radial arrays are made, and also, just going over them. So we are just going to take this, and the first thing that we're going to do is transform it. So I'm going to push it out on the X just like the rest of them. And the first solution that we'll attempt will be the duplicate elements. So let's go with duplicate elements. We'll duplicate instances, but for this to be duplicated, we'll need to make this into instances. So let's look for geometry to instance. And now that we have this, we can duplicate this many times as we need. We'll put this out as a, let's bring out the input. So group input, and we'll just connect this here. So this is the count. We can go ahead and just call this count. We'll be using this over and over, just dealing with it early. So this will deal with how many times we create our duplicate. And so now we want to duplicate it. So I'm going to use let's go with transform geometry. And we'll go to rotation, and we'll go to separate XYZ. Or maybe it was a combine XYZ. I always get them confused. And let's just connect our duplicate index, and we're getting nothing. So where are we going wrong here? Let's bring out a math, and we'll just start off taking our count, dividing it into the radians of 360 degrees. And now that we have this, let us try placing this, and we're getting somewhere. Now we need to bring in another math, and perhaps we need to multiply it against our index, and we're almost there except for this not working out. So it looks like transform geometry is not the right one. What we want is transform indexes, or transform instances, which is a better offering. Let us connect it, and we see that we are now getting somewhere. So let's try dividing this. We'll reconnect it, and we actually want rotate instances. Alright, and we are getting somewhere. So now that we are multiplying it after dividing it, we're definitely making some progress. So if we add to it, we see that we're making it around. So there's something wrong with our math so far. This is what we have so far. I think we want to divide it as well, and then just double check what order we have our inputs in. So we just have our count divided by, we have 360 divided by our count, and then we have our index also being divided by this value, giving us basically our first radial array. So here we have went through and set this up relatively quick, even though I somewhat stumbled along for this, but we have a few more examples to go through with this. There's so many ways to do radial arrays that they are truly trivial. In fact, at the time that we were making radial arrays in hardhops, they were trivial, but now they are even more trivial, which is great because now we can start talking about spherical arrays and other cylindrical arrays, other multi-dimensional arrays, right? All right, so we have our formula, and it works for this particular thing. So let us do a few separations. This one, we will just take this, let's Control J, F2, we'll just call this Radial Duplicate. So let us come up here, we'll do a reroute, and we're just going to bring out a repeat. And what we want repeat to do is every time this goes in, first of all, it gets joined to what it did, but then it also will basically rotate it. So let's create a redirect here, and let's try we could convert it into an instance again. We just keep converting everything into instances. I keep asking what's the purpose of using instances, if it's like a way to bundle or package a kind of mesh into like an instance, kind of like you would use a collection to kind of bundle a thing into a non-editing thing, but mysteries to still be solved. But I've been dedicated to this geometry node adventure. So what we want to do from here is we want to take our count. So let's input our group input, and our count is how many times we want to go through these iterations too. So every time the count goes up, it goes through another iteration in which it takes the count, divides it by 360. Let's go ahead and try that. So math, we'll try a divide by 360, and then what we want to do is each iteration possibly multiply that. And I'm just guessing here. I'll probably be wrong before I'm right. So let's find out. Let's combine them. It just feels better. And I'm going to change this one to multiply. And do we want to multiply it by the iteration? And we're almost right, except we are very wrong. And where are we wrong? I'm going to bypass connecting this inside, and we'll just connect on the outside. And this was something that was being discussed right before I began recording about how not having something on the input, but bringing it into transform will work better for me as far as resolving duplicates. So we're just jumping ahead to a potential solution that I'll be facing later. We see that it does not work with divide. Let's multiply. So we want each iteration to be multiplied by the division of what we get from this by the count. Sounds right. And so next we will go ahead and switch these inputs. And that should have taken us right to the solution. But instead now we have to ponder this. Alright. This one of these needed to be switched because it's a divide, multiply, divide situation. So now we have the second one set up. So now when we up the count, we're now upping the count, and we're using a repeat to do it. And the best part is we do not have any issues with doubles happening. And the way that we can tell that is, let us jump to this one. And we can't tell anything because these instances are still instances. Let's realize them. and we see that we are at 6496.48, and we come up here and we're at 6496.48. Previously, I was rehearsing a solution where I would have been using a merge doubles at the end, and I just didn't like that. It's one of my biggest concerns when I'm dealing with nodes is that I'm duplicating geometry and having geometry sit on top of geometry because my math is off or off by one, or it's just something that happens to me. I'll be the one that divides by 0 and destroys the world. So let us continue. So now we have this, and these are not instances, it's just one package. We have this, it's just one package now, and we'll make it complex before we make it easy. So let us continue our adventure. So I'm going to bring this up and we'll do a reroute. And so we went over a solution involving radial, and we went over a solution involving duplicate. So we'll put this together and we'll just call this radial duplicate. And to me, they're all the same. It's just how you want to do it. But I see that there's just so many ways that you could accomplish this very common thing now that is just mind-blowing. And so I just had to do a video about it. There's no end to the amount of videos about this topic on YouTube already. So the next one I want to talk about is doing it using like a curve. So let's use a circle, curve circle, because it's got that good data. And what we want to do is instance on points. And what do we want to instance? We want to instance this thing. And what do we get? We get this as our result. That's not going to work. We need a better connection. So let us actually grab from here all the way from half court and bring it here, and we're now good to go. Except, what do we want our radius to be? Well, I want our radius to be based off of what we did to this x factor. So let us combine. I'll know it today, and it's 6.2. Let's just put it at 6. We'll go at 6 today, and we'll put that at 6, and we'll connect it here, and it'll reset it to 0 because Mondays, am I right? And I look at my watch and it's Tuesday, which is really how bad Mondays are getting now, guys. they're keeping on us till Thursday now. All right, so never mind. Just a little weekday humor. I'm sorry. I'm so corny. Let's put this at 6. 6. I almost got demonic there. I kept putting 6s. Sorry about that. All right. And now that we have this, we are going to. I'm about to connect to one of those, but we might as well use another one. You can tell I've been watching a lot of Radial now that I'm using these inputs everywhere. Once I'm making little control groups, and I've really been watching too much of them. So let us take distance and plug it into radius. So now, if we were to hypothetically switch between all 3 of these with a switch, maybe not that switch, maybe something called a menu switch. And so A is curve, B is repeat, and this one can be duplicate. All right. Oh, sorry. I was looking at this. I was like, wait, what? I misread what I was reading there. I misinterpreted what I was reading there. And so we'll just call this type. So we'll go here. And so now we can just jump between our likely suspects now. I mean, we'll still be needing our viewer a lot, but now we can jump around and things are just great. And for the most part, everything looks stable. Everything is the same except for we need to connect count up to resolution. And now when we go from curve to repeat to duplicate, everything is perfect. You don't see any mistakes, okay? Those people talking about curve, get them out the studio, all right? Just get them out right now, all right? But for those who are still here, let's go ahead and deal with that. So one of the things I do like about curves is sampling now. So we'll just go with rotation, and let's do align rotation to vector. And we want our vector to be the normals. And so let's choose the right axis, which in this case is X. And now we have all three of them exactly the same. So let's put a realized instances in here, just to keep everything the same as we jump between them. So we go between. We're looking at repeat, curve, and duplicate. We want to make sure that there's no differences in them and they all behave exactly the same, because we just created 3 different radial arrays in 15 minutes, but it's actually 16 minutes, but 15 minutes sounds cooler because it divides by 5. So now what I want to do is specify which one that we did whenever we change the switch via text in the center. So let's this is completely unnecessary, and let's do a string to curve, weird name for text, but cool name, bro, I'll rock with it. And what we want here is a switch, but maybe an index switch. And index switch was, I was searching for so many different solutions for solving this, and in the end it is the index switch that I needed. I wish I could get the name from here, but I can't even pass strings along like notes in prison, but that's what I was trying to do. So what we'll do is I'm going to just bring out and now that I have that, I now have an extra slot. That's all I did. I just did that to have an extra slot. And we want this to be, let's see, curve, repeat, duplicate, curve, repeat, duplicate. And so how are we going to make it switch between these? Well, I found the easiest way is to play with storing name values. Capturing values and attributes is something that it just took me a long time for me to get my head around because I'm slow. So let's go with a store name attribute. And let's go with name. And I'm sure there's a easier way to do this. So we'll just give that one 0. We'll give that one 1. We'll give that one 2. And that works. So if we go to our output, we can see that whenever we change between these, we now have a name being given to us. Probably don't need on the whole thing. We probably could just keep it as an instance and then realize it later, and then just have it just the object name on the instance instead of just having it on every single face. I mean, as I ponder it, I see. All right, so I'll have to be. I think a lot about nodes when I'm not messing with nodes anymore. Like after I'm done, I'm thinking about them. Like I always try to make the connection straight up. I'm like, green to green, baby, bound. Why doesn't that work? Oh, because it's a diamond and a circle, and so at night, you know, my woman probably thinks I don't love her, but instead I'm wondering why I can't connect the I know why I can't connect the diamond to a circle, but that doesn't mean I can't stop wanting to try. So what I want to do here is get a statistic. I love attribute statistic. I mean, it's a humongous node. It's like the King Kong of nodes, right? Like this thing is huge, but it's so great. We'll connect the attribute and we'll just grab it from the face and we'll connect it to our me. And that should do it. So now when we change it, it jumps between the names. So basically we grabbed it from this moment in time. We grabbed this attribute statistic of name, and then from there we're able to plug it in here. I don't know why that works, but Blender is training me the hard way, but I see their struggle with indicating to people like, hey, stop plugging diamonds into circles even if they're the same color. I mean, you really want to, because I mean they're using the same imagery as children's toys. So I think a lot about these nodes, because I mean, I think I mentioned it previously, but their look is about to change radically, making this video completely obsolete. But hey, what can you do? So we now have our curve and it's looking pretty good, except it's not looking pretty good. In fact, let's fill the curve. That looks better. Let's also choose a font. And I think I have my own fonts, but you know what? We're inside the Windows fonts. And when in Windows fonts, grab a Windows font, even though they're all probably against the law to use, right? So we're going to scale this up. I'm going to set the horizontal alignment to center, set the vertical to middle, and you know, we could have this scale dynamically to fit this based off of the distance. In fact, let's try it. I mean, this is completely unrehearsed, but alright, that's actually not that bad, except it's not perfect either. I'm going to use a math and then use I was actually about to use a multiply, but then I got hit by all these memories of exponentially bad multiplication scenarios just not working out for me. So at least now we have our text in here, and we probably just want it to, you know, not touch the edges. In fact, we probably could leave it alone and be better for it, right? But let's take a look at what we have at the end here. So now we have a radial array that's built up out of 3 different systems. We have curves that are powering it on one side. In fact, if we wanted to, we could have the curve at this point be added through. I love the idea of just interjecting things when messing with nodes. The more I mess with it, the more into it I am, the more I'm enjoying it, because it is a way of thinking almost as fast as I'm able to think. If I'm able to understand it, that is, right? Like if I'm able to understand it, then I just keep plopping nodes, keep dropping nodes. It's the math part, math curve, so steep, so fast, right? So we're trying to step into it, we're trying to have fun with it. But let's take a look at our final result. So we have curve, we have repeat, which repeat needs no introduction, but if we wanted to, we could have iteration. Let's try it. Biggest node ever. Every time I drop it, it's just wowie. Alright, and we want this to have the same position as this. So how do we do that per letter? Each letter, we want it to be positioned. You know what? I'm going to try to solve it on my feet. And that is by, we have a cube in here. does it get transformed here? Let's go with a statistic. I was about to try to use something else, but and we'll go with position, and let's connect mean up to the. I want to collapse it, but I don't want to make it weird yet. Alright, and we want to put each letter per iteration there. In fact, I've opened up a can of worms in this video. Alright, so now that we've opened a can of worms, let's get in here and figure this out. So I'm just going to bring this down. And let's get in here. So we should change this to be a vector. So that way we now have this in the correct location. And let's deal with this on an individual level. So we are grabbing the value before we rotate it. We actually don't want to do that. We want to do it in its new position. And now we have them right where we want them. However, we also want to change this to be center. We also want to change this to be middle. And we also want to translate them just a little bit on the Z. So I approach things a little bit simplistic, a little bit. God, there's so many options. There should just be a way to collapse this down more and more. I mean, I guess that is the more and more version, but I still like to see my connections. I need my connections to give me security. Anyways, we'll control H on that because that's way too big for what it's used for, which is barely anything. It's just giving us a little bit of that. Let's bring in a vector map. And I know, I could have done a little bit better job of organizing these things. Let's fill curve to further add to our mess. And let's see, do we want to maybe push them out? Probably want to at least improve the size of them, but the visibility is just terrible. So if we were to adjust it each time, we'd probably need to get the normal somehow. That's just what I'm thinking in my head. That's something I'll have to be thinking about after the video. But we now have it able to display the number, but we also probably want to have a math, and let's just add 1, just so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and I guess we can have it display as a wire since that at least gives it visibility. Didn't count on that or think about that in advance. Alright, I'm just trying to control scroll, but it's not letting me. So here we're looking at repeat, where it's displaying our number each time that we repeat, and then our distance. In fact, if we want to get even more weird with it, right, we could have it display the distance in the center. But let's jump over, this is curve, displaying our curve, so we can see the simplicity of our curve doing our radial array. We can see the count of our radial array, and then for duplicate, what do we want to do here? I mean, what is there to do here, right? Really, all there is to do at this point is just wrap up the video because it's just artificially prolonged. But I guess we can wrap this here, ending this video with a radial array that you can just get in here and play with. In fact, we could also replace the geometry with custom geometry, but I did not add the ability to do a switch for that. So I'm just thinking out loud how I would do that. We would need to replace it here and here. Alright, let's look at our inputs, and we're just seeing what we're getting here when it comes to geometry, just in case we want to give it a custom piece of geometry. Alright, so skipping that, let's try it out with a different mesh. We will add a geometry node, and we see that everything is working the way it's supposed to. In fact, let's try rotating on its side, RX, 90, RY, and we see that it's working correctly with our curve. Repeat and duplicate with no weird differences between them. So this is a good place for us to wrap this video. I just wanted to get in, just do something fun about radial array, maybe dig myself a little bit of a hole when it came to adding a little bit of additional complexity to the radial duplicate. And then here at the top we have a curve duplicate, so we will name that so, with Control J, F2, curve radial. So now we have all three examples to go over. So now whenever it comes to working on the fly and radials, you should be able to just quickly come up with however you want to do it depending on your basic radial needs and just jump through it. In fact, we put one more over here, set to be repeat, and that is a nice visual to end this on. In fact, if we were to get up here and turn off the floor, maybe the axes, and we don't even need a 3D cursor today, well, at this moment at least, we can also maybe turn off origins, and voila. So with that, I will wrap up this video, and I thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. So I gotta have the video end with the ability for me to use custom mesh support, even though the more I think about it, the more that is kind of unusual for a radial array, right? So let us just jump into Boxcutter, and I'm going to go over to custom, and we are just going to draw out a logo. And I was holding the wrong keys there. I want to hold Control in order to get it equidistant. And we're just going to grab these interior faces and Control I to delete the inverse, and that will just give us the Boxcutter logo. Because it's built to be a cutter, it's the inverse of the logo, so we're just basically getting it back. And let's fix our lock rod scale. Place it in the center. We'll just place this over here. And so now we want to go all the way back to the beginning and place a switch. At the end, I was looking at this thinking, the option to make this swappable is very easy. I set it up at the very beginning whenever I brought this piece out here. So now that we have this, we'll have true here, and we'll just have this connect out to object. And this switch will allow us to use custom object. So we're just bringing this up to count. And let's see, true is custom object. So that means this option's name is custom object. So whenever we check it, it allows us to use a custom object. However, custom object isn't specified. So let's go ahead and plug that in as well. And we will bring this up. And for this, let's plug up our object, which name is custom. Just had to double check. And now we have our custom object. And if we look at our modifier, we haven't even named it yet, but we just call this radial. In fact, I'd call this radial demo because the proper version wouldn't have text. We should probably put that on a text box as well. In fact, let's also put this one under custom, check it, and we're just seeing how it looks. I didn't want the video to end with me just not being able to do that, but especially when the solution's right in front of me. But I just been spending all day thinking about radials and kind of reviewing radials just to get used to the state of radials now in Blender, because they are changing, and you know, the need to make them is still there. In fact, what else remains? I think that is it. So with that, oh wait, no, we want to get rid of the text on demand. So let's bring up another switch. If it's true, you mean to use the text. Otherwise, you mean not to use the text. So let's input, group input. And this switch is for custom text. And if we check it, it disappears. So we could just get rid of it on demand. If we need to use a custom object, we could uncheck it. I wish we could make options disappear, but that's just not a thing yet. Custom object, custom text. And we can still get in here and deal with our count and our distance, and we could even add an axis if we need it, but that would be an additional time added to the video. But whenever it comes to axes, it's just a matter of really just rotating the array, in my opinion. But with that, I will wrap up this video finally. Sorry for the delay, but now we have got in here and set up 3 different radial arrays. We've made it where it's able to support custom objects. We even went over the history of radial array and what it means to hard ops and Boxcutter, and just demonstrated it over time, making for a interesting and historical video. So with that, I'll wrap this, and I'll see you guys next time.